Hello, my name is William, and welcome to Dragon X Dominion, a realm where dragon legends are forged in fire, honor, and forgotten worlds. I will be your narrator and guide through these epic lands. If you crave powerful stories, legendary dragons, and wars that echo through eternity, then you found your home, ladies and gentlemen. So subscribe, and claim your place among these legends.
The ventilation shaft had been making strange noises for 3 days before anyone bothered to check it. Theo crawled through the narrow tunnel with his toolkit, following the heat readings on his scanner. At 16, he was small enough to fit into spaces the regular maintenance crews avoided. That made him useful at the Galactic Archive, even if nobody remembered his name most days. The heat signature grew stronger as he pushed deeper into the forgotten sections. These tunnels hadn't appeared on any recent station maps. Theo's scanner showed the temperature climbing to levels that should have triggered every alarm in the facility. Yet somehow, nothing had registered. The metal beneath his hands felt warm, almost alive. When the shaft opened into a massive chamber, Theo forgot to breathe. The room stretched out like a cathedral carved from dark stone. Rows of pedestals lined the walls, each one holding what looked like a giant egg. Theo counted 37 of them. His light played across their surfaces, revealing intricate patterns frozen in the stone. These weren't eggs anymore. They were fossils. Except one. In the center of the chamber, a single pedestal held an egg that glowed with faint warmth. Theo approached it slowly, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The egg was roughly the size of his torso, covered in deep blue scales that seemed to shift in the light. He reached out, then stopped himself. His training screamed at him to report this immediately, but something about the chamber felt sacred, like disturbing it would be a violation. A control panel jutted from the wall nearby, its screen flickering with ancient text. Theo recognized some of the symbols from his studies. He had learned 6 galactic languages during his years bouncing between foster homes on different stations. Reading kept him busy during the long stretches when nobody wanted to talk to the human kid. The text described a hatchery. Dragons. Theo's hands shook as he scrolled through the files. Dragons had been the galaxy's peacekeepers once, thousands of years ago. They mediated disputes, protected trade routes, and kept the peace between species. Then they had gone extinct, victims of a plague that spread too fast for even their advanced medicine to stop. This chamber had been sealed 3 centuries ago, declared a historical monument that nobody bothered to visit. The files showed that all 38 eggs had been classified as non-viable, dead before they could hatch. But the scanner in Theo's hand disagreed. The central egg registered a temperature of 37 degrees. It had a heartbeat, faint, slow, but steady. Theo pulled up more files, his heart racing. Dragon eggs needed specific conditions to hatch. The right temperature, proper humidity, careful monitoring. But there was another requirement, mentioned in a footnote that most researchers had dismissed as superstition. Dragon eggs needed companionship. They needed to know that someone was waiting for them. Without that connection, they simply wouldn't hatch, no matter how perfect the environmental conditions. 300 years. This egg had been waiting alone for 300 years. The next file made Theo's stomach drop. A demolition order dated 2 days ago. The archive was expanding its eastern wing. This section had been marked for destruction. In 46 hours, construction crews would arrive to tear everything down. The historical committee had approved it. After all, there was nothing here but stone and memories. Theo sat down on the floor, staring at the egg. He should leave, report what he found. Let the proper authorities handle it. That's what the regulations said. That's what a smart person would do. But Theo had spent his entire life being handled by proper authorities, shuffled from one temporary placement to another. He remembered the social workers who smiled and promised this home would be different before moving him along when it wasn't. He remembered waiting for someone to come back to keep their promises to stay. Nobody ever stayed. The egg pulsed with warmth under the chamber's dim lights. Alone, forgotten, scheduled for destruction because it was inconvenient and nobody believed it mattered anymore. Theo pulled out his comm unit and stared at it for a long moment. Then he turned it off and set it aside. He shrugged off his jacket, wadded it into a pillow, and leaned against the pedestal. "I don't know if you can hear me," he said to the egg, "but I'm not leaving. I know what it's like to wait alone, so I'm going to stay right here." The egg's surface felt smooth under his palm. Theo started talking, telling it about his day, about the broken recycler on Deck 9 and the weird smell in the hydroponics bay, about the book he was reading and the terrible food in the station cafeteria. Small things, unimportant things. The kind of things you share when you're not alone anymore. Hours passed. Theo's supervisor would be looking for him soon. The demolition crews would arrive in less than 2 days. The galactic authorities would have him removed. None of it mattered. He had made his choice. For the first time in his life, Theo was choosing to stay. The egg's temperature rose by half a degree. Theo woke to find Brel standing over him, all 4 arms crossed in obvious disapproval. The tall alien's purple skin had darkened to an almost black shade, which meant he was either very worried or very angry. Probably both. "Theo," Brel said quietly, "what are you doing?" Theo sat up, keeping one hand on the egg. It felt warmer than before, more alive. "My job, there was a heat signature I investigated." "Your job does not include camping in restricted areas." Brel's translator device made his clicking language sound almost gentle, but the concern was real. "The demolition is scheduled for tomorrow morning. You need to leave." "No." Brel's eye stalks drooped in frustration. "Theo, be reasonable. This chamber is marked for destruction. The permits are filed, the crews are hired. One human child cannot stop this." "Watch me. They will remove you by force." "Then they'll have to." Brel sat down on the stone floor, his legs folding in that strange way his species managed. He had been kind to Theo since the boy started working at the archive 6 months ago. Never forgot his name. Always explained things twice when Theo didn't understand. Now he looked tired. "Why?" Brel asked simply. Theo gestured at the egg. "Because it's alive, the scans prove it. This egg has been waiting for 300 years and it's still alive. How can they just destroy it?" "Because the galactic government has determined that the resources required to maintain this facility outweigh the potential benefits of preserving non-viable historical artifacts." "It's not non-viable, it has a heartbeat." Brel pulled out his own scanner and ran it over the egg. His eye stalks shot straight up in surprise. "That's impossible. Dragon eggs were declared extinct." "Guess they were wrong." Theo leaned back against the pedestal. "I read the old files. Dragon eggs need companionship to hatch. Someone has to be with them, talk to them, stay with them. For 300 years, nobody did, so it waited." "And you think you can make it hatch by sitting here?" "For a day." "I think I can try. That's more than anyone else has done." Brel was quiet for a long moment, studying the egg and then Theo. "Tell me the real reason." Theo looked down at his hands. "When I was 7, my first foster family kept me for 3 months. They had a party when I arrived, told everyone how excited they were to help a poor human orphan. Then they got busy with work and forgot to pick me up from school. I waited outside for 6 hours before a teacher called the authorities. They sent me back the next day." "I'm sorry. I've been in 14 different homes. Every time they promised it would be permanent. Every time something changed. Too expensive, too difficult, not what they expected. I got really good at packing my things fast." Theo touched the egg again. "This egg has been alone for 3 centuries, waiting, hoping, still alive somehow. I know what that feels like, so I'm staying." Brel stood slowly. "The authorities will be here in the morning." "I know. This will not end well for you." "Probably not." Brel walked toward the exit, then paused. "I will delay them as long as I can, but Theo, when they come, I cannot protect you." "I'm not asking you to." After Brel left, Theo pulled out the food he had stuffed in his pockets. A protein bar and a water bottle, not much but enough. He ate slowly, telling the egg about the taste, describing the way the chocolate coating melted slightly in the chamber's warmth, talking about nothing important, just filling the silence. The egg's surface changed under his palm. The scales seemed to shift, reorganizing into new patterns. Theo pulled up the research files again, reading everything he could find about dragon biology. Dragons bonded with other beings through something called resonance, a connection deeper than friendship. When a dragon found someone worth protecting, worth staying with, the bond changed both of them. Hours crawled by. Theo talked about the books he'd read, the stations he'd lived on, the time he'd tried to cook Earth food in a Centauri kitchen and nearly started a fire. Silly stories, sad ones, anything to keep the egg from being alone. The temperature rose another degree. The heartbeat grew stronger, faster. Theo felt it thrumming through his palm like a second pulse matching his own. His comm unit buzzed. 17 messages from his supervisor, 12 from station security, 5 from administrative officials he'd never met. Theo ignored all of them. He downloaded star charts instead, showing them to the egg through his data pad. "This is Earth," he said, zooming in on a small blue planet. "That's where humans come from originally. I've never been there, most of us haven't. We spread out pretty fast once we figured out space travel. But they say it's beautiful, lots of water, green things growing everywhere, maybe you'd like it." The egg pulsed with warmth. Theo kept talking through the night, his voice getting hoarse. He told the egg about constellations and quantum mechanics and the weird poetry that Brell's species wrote. He described colors and sounds and the feeling of gravity changing when a ship jumped through hyperspace. Everything he knew, everything he'd learned, poured out in a steady stream of words. Because that's what the egg needed. Not just presence, but connection, proof that someone cared enough to share their world. When Brell returned in the morning, he wasn't alone. A small alien with 6 legs and kind eyes followed him into the chamber. She carried a bag of medical equipment. "This is Dr. Yuna," Brell said. "I thought if the egg is truly alive, we should monitor its health properly." Theo blinked back sudden tears. "Thank you." Yuna set up her equipment, running scans that made soft beeping sounds. "Remarkable. The vital signs are definitely strengthening. Heart rate increasing, temperature stabilizing. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "I'm just talking." "Then talk." Yuna smiled, which looked strange on her species but felt genuine. "I'll make sure the readings are documented, properly, officially." Brell pulled out a container of food. Real food, not protein bars. "You need to eat. If you're going to be stubborn, at least be healthy about it." As Theo ate, he realized something had changed. He wasn't alone anymore either. The egg had someone to wait with it, and so did he. The video went viral by accident. A junior archivist named Len had been recording Theo's vigil for documentation purposes, but she made the mistake of streaming it to her personal social feed. Within 3 hours, 8 million beings across 40 systems were watching a human teenager refuse to leave a dragon egg that the galaxy had abandoned. By hour 6, the number hit 200 million. Theo didn't know any of this at first. He was too busy describing Earth's oceans. To the egg, explaining how water could be different colors depending on what lived in it. Yuna had confirmed that the egg's temperature had risen 3 full degrees since Theo started his vigil. The heartbeat was now strong enough to register on standard medical equipment. Brell burst into the chamber looking panicked. "Theo, we have a situation." "Is it the demolition cruise?" "Worse, you're famous." Theo blinked. "What?" Brell showed him the view counts on the live stream. Comments poured in from thousands of species, translated into every known language. Most were supportive, some were angry, all of them were watching. A message notification popped up on Brell's datapad. Then another. Then 50 more in rapid succession. Official communications from government offices, news agencies, and private citizens. The Galactic Archive's main communication system was crashing from the volume of incoming messages. "This is going to make things complicated," Yuna said quietly, checking the egg's vital signs again. "Overseer Halrath does not like public attention." As if summoned by his name, Halrath's image appeared on every screen in the chamber. The thick-bodied bureaucrat looked furious, his scales flushed dark red with anger. "This unauthorized occupation ends immediately," Halreth announced. Security forces are authorized to remove the trespasser by any means necessary. The demolition proceeds as scheduled. The live stream exploded with comments. Beings from across the galaxy shouted their opposition. Petitions formed within minutes. 3 separate trade guilds threatened to pull their contracts with the archive if the egg was destroyed. Halreth cut the connection, but the damage was done. The galaxy was watching, and it had opinions. 2 hours later, the first humans arrived. Sam came through the ventilation shaft that Theo had used, carrying 3 bags of supplies. He was older than Theo, maybe 19, with the lean build of someone who'd grown up on a low-gravity station. "Figured you could use some help," Sam said, dumping the bags on the floor. Food, water, blankets, and medical supplies spilled out. "I was in the foster system too, aged out last year. When I saw what you were doing, I had to come." More people followed. A human woman named Dre, who worked in the archive's cafeteria, brought hot meals. 2 human brothers from a nearby mining station arrived with camping gear. An elderly human couple who ran a small shop on the commercial deck brought books and games to help pass the time. None of them were rich. None of them were powerful. But all of them understood what it meant to be forgotten, to be considered too much trouble, to be scheduled for removal because you were inconvenient. Una set up a proper medical station, her equipment monitoring the egg constantly. The readings showed continued improvement. Cracks had begun to appear on the surface, thin lines that glowed with inner warmth. "It's really happening," Una whispered. "After 300 years, it's really going to hatch." Brel coordinated the growing crowd, making sure everyone had what they needed. He brought in portable generators and lights, transforming the ancient chamber into something alive. The fossilized eggs on their pedestals watched silently as the living one prepared to break free. The view count passed 1 billion. Messages flooded in from scientists, historians, and dragon researchers who'd spent their careers studying the extinct species. They sent files, advice, and encouragement. A famous xenobiologist offered to come personally to assist with the hatching. 3 different universities requested permission to study the event. Halreth's response was to send security forces. 20 armed guards entered the chamber at midnight, their weapons ready. Their commander was a professional soldier who looked uncomfortable with his orders. "Please evacuate immediately," he said. "We are authorized to use force." Theo stood, positioning himself between the guards and the egg. Sam and the others formed a line beside him. Not threatening, not aggressive, just present. "You'll have to move us," Theo said calmly. The commander hesitated. His weapon was designed to stun, not kill, but using it on unarmed civilians while 1 billion people watched would destroy his career. He knew it. Everyone knew it. "Please don't make this difficult," the commander said quietly. "We're not making it difficult, we're just not leaving." The standoff lasted 30 minutes. The guards shifted uncomfortably. The crowd of humans stood firm. The egg pulsed with warmth, its cracks spreading slowly across the surface. Finally, the commander's comm unit buzzed. He listened, his expression unreadable, then lowered his weapon. "We're withdrawing," he announced, "but this isn't over." After the guards left, Theo sat back down. Beside the egg, his hands were shaking. Sam put a hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" "No, but I'm not leaving." Dre brought food, making sure everyone ate. The elderly couple started teaching some of the younger visitors a card game from Earth. People talked in quiet voices, sharing stories of their own struggles and survivals. The chamber had become something unexpected. Not just a hatchery, but a gathering place. A reminder that sometimes the most important thing you could do was simply refuse to abandon someone who needed you. The view count passed 2 billion. Halreth appeared on screen again, his rage barely controlled. "This illegal occupation is interfering with authorized operations. The Galactic Council will hear about this. That boy and everyone helping him will face consequences." But even as he threatened, his power was slipping away. Public opinion had turned decisively against him. Entire planets were demanding the egg be protected. Politicians who had never cared about dragons or humans suddenly discovered passionate opinions about preserving galactic heritage. Theo ignored all of it. He kept talking to the egg, describing the people who had come to help, telling it about Sam's jokes and Yuna's careful monitoring and Brell's worried kindness, sharing the warmth of community that had formed around them both. The egg's heartbeat grew stronger. The cracks spread wider. Something was moving inside, pushing against the shell from within. The hatching had begun. The security forces returned at dawn with Overseer Halrath himself. This time they meant business. Halrath stormed into the chamber with legal documents, demolition permits, and an expression that promised no more delays. "Remove them all," Halrath ordered. "I don't care how many people are watching, this farce ends now." The egg chose that moment to crack wide open. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. A piece of shell the size of Theo's hand fell away, revealing scales underneath that shimmered with colors that shouldn't exist together. Purple and gold and deep blue, shifting and changing with each movement. Theo knelt beside the egg as more pieces fell away. A tiny head pushed through, no bigger than his fist. The hatchling was weak, trembling, its eyes still closed. It made a soft, chirping sound that went straight to Theo's heart. "Help me," Theo said to Yuna, his voice breaking. Yuna moved fast, her medical training taking over. She helped ease the shell away carefully, revealing a dragon the size of a house cat. It was nothing like the massive beasts from ancient records. This creature was fragile, delicate, covered in scales that looked almost transparent in places. The hatchling's eyes opened, revealing irises that swirled with the same impossible colors as its scales. It looked directly at Theo and chirped again, a sound of recognition and desperate need. Theo picked it up gently, cradling it against his chest. The dragon was warm and soft and trembling. It pressed its head under Theo's chin and made a contented humming sound. "Impossible," Halrath breathed, staring at the scene. "Dragon eggs were extinct. This is impossible." "Apparently not," Sam said quietly. Yuna ran her scanners over the hatchling, her expression growing more concerned with each reading. "Its vital signs are extremely weak. Heart rate irregular, body temperature unstable. This dragon needs immediate intensive care or it won't survive the next few hours." "Then we get it that care," Theo said firmly. Halrath stepped forward. "That creature is galactic property. It needs to be transferred to a proper research facility immediately." The hatchling whimpered and buried itself deeper against Theo. Its breathing became rapid, panicked. Yuna's scanners started beeping an alarm. "Stop," Yuna commanded. "Its stress levels are spiking. Any attempt to separate it from Theo right now could be fatal." Halrath's expression hardened. "Unacceptable, I have authority here." "Then use it to help instead of harm," Brell said, stepping between Halrath and Theo. "This dragon chose Theo. That has to mean something." The hatchling chirped again, weaker this time. Theo felt its heartbeat against his chest, irregular and fading. Terror gripped him. He had stayed, had refused to leave, had done everything right. But the galaxy wasn't fair. He knew that better than anyone. "Please," Theo whispered, not to Halrath, but to the dragon. "Stay with me. I stayed with you. Please don't leave now." The dragon's scales began to glow, pulsing with light that matched Theo's heartbeat. Warmth spread through his chest, foreign but not unwelcome. He felt something forming between them, a connection that went deeper than words or touch. The dragon's fear mixed with his own, and underneath both was something stronger. Recognition, belonging, choice. The hatchling's vital signs stabilized. Its breathing evened out. The panic faded, replaced by something that felt like contentment. Yuna stared at her scanners. "Their heartbeats are synchronizing. I've never seen anything like this. It's as if they're sharing biological functions." "That's bonding," said a new voice from the entrance. Everyone turned to see an ancient alien shuffling into the chamber. He was a species Theo didn't recognize, hunched with age, wearing robes that looked older than the archive itself. His eyes were cloudy but sharp with intelligence. "Who are you?" Halreth demanded. "Rendix, I study dead things, dragons mostly." The old alien moved closer, examining the hatchling with obvious fascination. "I was halfway across the galaxy when I saw the stream. Took 3 hyperspace jumps to get here. Worth it to see this." "See what exactly?" Brill asked. Rendix pulled out a datapad covered in dust and ancient symbols. "These aren't natural dragon eggs. The last dragons created them before they died out. A final gift to the galaxy, or maybe a test." "A test of what?" Theo asked, holding the dragon closer. "Worthiness." Rendix scrolled through files that looked handwritten. "Dragons were peacekeepers, mediators, protectors. They chose those roles because they valued certain qualities above all else. Loyalty, compassion, the refusal to abandon those who need help. When they knew they were dying, they engineered these eggs as a way to find beings who embodied those same values." "That's just legend," Halreth scoffed. "Legends are often just history that people stopped believing." Rendix pointed at the egg fragments on the floor. "Look at the shell composition. Biological technology we still can't replicate. These eggs were designed to remain viable for millennia, waiting for the right catalyst." "What catalyst?" Una asked. "Someone who would stay, who would refuse to leave even when ordered, even when threatened, even when it seemed pointless. The eggs respond to genuine compassion and unwavering loyalty. Not because of magic, but because those qualities create specific bioelectric signatures that trigger the hatching sequence." Theo looked down at the dragon in his arms. It had fallen asleep, its tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm with his own breathing. "So it hatched because I stayed." "It hatched because you proved you were worthy of the bond." Rendix smiled, showing teeth. "That had seen centuries. Dragons chose their companions carefully. This one chose you." "This changes everything," Brell said slowly. "If these eggs are the dragon's legacy, then destroying them would be a violation of ancient galactic law. The Dragon Accords supersede current regulations." Halrath's face went through several shades of purple. "The Dragon Accords haven't been invoked in 300 years. They're obsolete." "They're still legally binding," Rendix said cheerfully. "I should know. I helped write the last amendment. Dragons had rights and privileges that persist beyond their extinction, including the right to choose their own successors." "Successors to what?" Sam asked. "To their role as galactic peacekeepers." Rendix gestured around the chamber at the other fossilized eggs. "If one egg hatched, others can too, but only for beings worthy of the bond. Your species seems to have the right qualities." The dragon stirred in Theo's arms, chirping softly. He stroked its head gently, feeling the warmth of their connection. After 16 years of being temporary, of being moved along, of never quite belonging anywhere, he had found something that chose him back. Halrath stood frozen, realizing his authority had just evaporated. The galaxy was watching. Ancient laws had been invoked, and a human orphan held a dragon that proved humanity worthy of a legacy 300 years dead. "This isn't over," Halrath said, but everyone heard the defeat in his voice. Rendix chuckled. "Oh, but it is. The real question is what comes next." The Galactic Council convened an emergency session 3 days later. Theo sat in the observation gallery with his dragon curled in his lap, watching as representatives from 200 species argued about what to do with him. The hatchling, which Theo had named Kai after an old Earth word for ocean, had grown noticeably stronger. Its scales shimmered with health, and it chirped happily whenever Theo spoke. Rendix stood before the council, his ancient voice carrying through the chamber's amplification system. He had spent the past 72 hours compiling evidence, and now he presented it with the confidence of someone who had literally helped write the laws he was citing. "The Dragon Accords are clear," Rendix said, projecting holographic images of ancient documents. "Dragons maintain the right to choose their successors, and those successors inherit all associated privileges and responsibilities. This includes immunity from prosecution for actions taken in defense of dragon interests." A counselor from the Vren coalition stood. These laws were written when dragons existed. They cannot apply to extinct species. The eggs are not extinct. As we have seen, they were merely waiting. Rendix pulled up biological scans of Kai. Furthermore, the Accords specifically addressed succession scenarios. The dragons anticipated their own extinction and planned for it. These eggs represent their final act of governance, choosing worthy beings to continue their legacy. Another counselor spoke up. Even if we accept this interpretation, one hatched egg does not justify preserving an entire facility. The cost is astronomical. Then perhaps you should consider the other developments, Rendix said with a sly smile. He displayed thermal scans of the hatchery. 4 more eggs now showed temperature increases. Since Kai hatched, other humans had been drawn to the chamber. A woman named Riley, who ran a shelter for displaced children. An older man called David, a former soldier who spent his retirement teaching peace mediation. A young person named Jordan, barely 18, who had survived abuse and dedicated themselves to helping others escape similar situations. Each of them had been sitting with eggs for the past 3 days, talking to them, staying with them, and the eggs were responding. Your species has something the dragons valued, Rendix told Theo quietly during a recess. You don't give up on people. Even when it's hard, even when it costs you, you stay. Theo watched Riley through the chamber's video feed. She was reading to her egg, a children's story about belonging and home. Not all humans are like that. No species is entirely anything, but enough of yours are. Rendix tapped his datapad. I've been studying human history, your wars, yes, but also your rescues. The way you run into burning buildings to save strangers. How you adopt children who aren't biologically yours and love them just as fiercely. The countless small acts of kindness and loyalty that define your culture. Dragons saw something in that. Dragons understood that true strength isn't about power. It's about choosing to care when you don't have to. The council session resumed. Overseer Halrath took the floor, his scales still flushed with anger. This human violated regulations, ignored lawful orders, and disrupted authorized operations. He should face consequences. What consequences? Brell asked from his seat in the gallery. He had been given speaking privileges as Theo's supervisor. For saving a life, for staying with a being that needed companionship, these are crimes now. For trespassing, The Dragon Accords grant Theo full authority over the hatchery and its contents, Rendix interrupted. He had every legal right to be there. In fact, you are the one who violated protocol by attempting to destroy dragon property without proper authorization. Halrath sputtered. The eggs were classified as non-viable. An incorrect classification, as events have proven. Your failure to properly assess the situation led to an attempted destruction of irreplaceable galactic heritage. If anyone should face consequences, it's you. The gallery erupted in noise. Counselors argued. Observers shouted their opinions. Through it all, Kai hummed contentedly in Theo's arms, completely unconcerned with galactic politics. A senior counselor finally called for order. She was a dignified alien whose species had been friends with the dragons millennia ago. Perhaps we are asking the wrong questions. Instead of debating legalities, we should ask what the dragons intended. Rendix, what was the purpose of these eggs? To find worthy successors, beings who could serve as peacekeepers, mediators, and protectors. The dragons created these eggs with sophisticated genetic programming. They respond only to individuals who demonstrate the necessary qualities through their actions, not their words. And if more eggs hatch, then humanity earns a place in galactic governance that was reserved for dragons. They become the new peacekeepers. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Humans were still considered newcomers by galactic standards, only 200 years into space travel. Now they were being offered a role that had been empty for 3 centuries. This could change the entire political structure of the galaxy, someone whispered. That's exactly what the dragons wanted, Rendix said. Stagnation leads to decay. They chose to create a mechanism for renewal, a test that could only be passed through genuine compassion and loyalty. Your species passed, counselors. Accept it or don't, but the eggs have spoken. A vote was called. It took 6 hours of debate, but finally the decision came through. The hatchery would be preserved and expanded. Humans who successfully bonded with dragons would be granted status as galactic peacekeepers, with all associated rights and responsibilities. A formal program would be established to facilitate the process. Halrath would be reassigned to a position with no authority over heritage sites. When Theo left the council chamber, reporters from 1,000 news agencies surrounded him. He ignored them all, focusing on Kai. The dragon chirped and nuzzled against his neck, its scales glowing with contentment. Sam waited outside with Riley, David, and Jordan. They all looked exhausted but hopeful. "Think it'll work?" Riley asked. "This whole peacekeeper thing." "I don't know," Theo admitted. "But we stayed when we could have left. We chose to care when it would have been easier not to. Maybe that's enough." Kai chirped in agreement. Back in the hatchery, 5 eggs now glowed with warmth. And across human space, thousands more people were hearing about the program. People who had spent their lives protecting others, who understood loyalty and compassion not as abstract concepts but as daily choices. The dragons had waited 300 years to find beings worthy of their legacy. They had chosen well. Theo carried Kai back to the chamber, ready to help the others as they began their own vigils. The galaxy was changing, and it had started with one stubborn human who refused to leave an egg alone in the dark. Sometimes the smallest acts of loyalty changed everything. 3 months later, Theo stood in what had become known as the Dragon Guardian Hall. The old hatchery had been transformed into a living facility where humans and their dragon partners trained together. 15 eggs had hatched so far, each choosing a human who had proven their worth through simple acts of staying, caring, and refusing to abandon those who needed them. Kai had grown to the size of a large dog, though Yuna insisted the dragon was still technically an infant. Its scales shifted through impossible colors as it practiced flying around the chamber, occasionally crashing into things with cheerful enthusiasm. Dragons, Rendix explained, bonded for life. Kai would grow alongside Theo, their connection deepening over decades. The other dragons showed similar growth, each one unique in coloring and personality. Riley's dragon, a gentle creature with silver. Scales stayed close to her constantly. David's dragon was bold and adventurous, matching the old soldier's protective nature. Jordan's dragon had golden scales that seemed to glow when they laughed together. Today was important, the first real test of what these bonds meant. 2 colony worlds in the outer reach were on the brink of war. A mining dispute had escalated over the past year, with both sides claiming legal rights to a valuable asteroid field. Traditional diplomatic channels had failed. Violence seemed inevitable. The Galactic Council had asked Theo and Kai to mediate. "Are you ready?" Brel asked. He had become the official administrator of the Guardian program, managing logistics while the bonded pairs learned their roles. Theo looked at Kai, who chirped confidently. Their connection hummed with shared determination. "As ready as we'll ever be." The shuttle ride to the disputed zone took 12 hours. Theo spent the time reading every file about the conflict, understanding the history and grievances of both sides. Kai curled in his lap, offering wordless support through their bond. When they arrived, representatives from both colonies were waiting in a neutral station. The room was tense, filled with angry beings who had spent months preparing for war. They looked at Theo with skepticism. He was just a kid with a small dragon. What could he possibly do? Theo didn't try to command their attention or assert authority. Instead, he simply asked them to tell their stories. One by one, colonists explained their positions, the mining rights they had purchased legally, the historical claims that predated those purchases, the families depending on the resources, the fear of losing everything they had built. Theo listened, really listened, and as he did, he felt Kai's presence beside him, calm and steady. The dragon's scales glowed softly, colors shifting in response to the emotions in the room. Something about Kai's presence made people speak more honestly, lower their defenses. "You're both right," Theo said finally. "And you're both wrong. You're fighting over resources when what you actually need is cooperation." "Easy for you to say," one representative snapped. "You're not the one facing financial collapse." "You're right, I'm not, but I do know what it's like to fight over scraps when there's a better solution if people just work together." Theo pulled up star charts. "This asteroid field isn't the only resource in the sector. There are 3 more fields within reasonable distance. Less valuable individually, but combined they're worth more than what you're fighting over. Those fields are uncharted. The mining would be difficult, but not impossible, especially if you pool resources instead of competing." Theo showed them projections Yuna had helped him create. "You have mining equipment and experience. They have processing facilities and distribution networks. Together, you could develop all 3 fields more efficiently than either could alone." The room went quiet. People studied the numbers, running their own calculations. "Why should we trust them?" someone asked. "Because the alternative is war, and wars cost more than cooperation ever will." Theo met their eyes steadily. "I'm not here to force you to do anything. I'm just showing you that there's another option, one where everyone benefits instead of everyone losing." Kai chirped softly, and somehow that sound carried weight in the silence. The dragon represented something these colonists had heard about but never believed in. Beings who chose peace not from weakness, but from genuine care for the well-being of others. The negotiations took 3 days. Theo served mostly as a facilitator, helping both sides communicate clearly and finding compromises that honored everyone's needs. Kai's presence kept tensions from boiling over, the dragon's calm somehow infectious. On the 3rd day, an agreement was reached. Joint mining operations, shared profits, coordinated development of all available resources. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair. Both sides left the table feeling heard and respected. When Theo and Kai returned to the Guardian Hall, they found it full of activity. More eggs were warming. More humans were arriving, drawn by stories of the program. People who worked in shelters and hospitals, who taught difficult students and cared for elderly family members, who stayed with friends through hard times and chose compassion over convenience. The galaxy was discovering what dragons had always known, that the greatest strength wasn't in weapons or wealth, but in the simple refusal to abandon those who needed help. Sam was there, sitting beside an egg that had just begun to glow. He looked up as Theo entered. "Think it'll choose me?" "I think if you're willing to stay, it already has." Rendix shuffled over, looking. "Pleased, successful first mission. The council is impressed. More assignments are already coming in. Seems everyone wants human mediators now." "We're not special," Theo said. "We just care." "That's what makes you special." Rendix patted Kai's head gently. "Dragons understood that compassion isn't weakness. It's the foundation of everything worth building. You humans are proving them right." Theo sat beside Sam, Kai settling in his lap. Through the dragon's eyes, he could sense the egg warming, responding to Sam's steady presence. Soon there would be another hatching. Another bond formed. Another human proving that the best way to change the galaxy was simply to refuse to leave when others needed you. Brell brought food, and Riley arrived with news that her egg was finally cracking. David was teaching a class on conflict resolution. Jordan was helping design expansion plans for the facility. The Guardian Hall buzzed with activity and hope. Theo thought about the scared orphan he had been just months ago, always temporary, never chosen, moving from place to place with practiced efficiency. He had stayed with an egg because he understood loneliness, and that one choice had changed everything. Kai hummed contentedly, their heartbeats synchronized in the bond that would last their entire lives. The dragon had chosen him, and he had chosen to stay. Together, they represented something the galaxy desperately needed. Proof that loyalty mattered, that compassion was strength, that the most powerful thing anyone could do was simply refuse to abandon those who needed them. The eggs continued warming. Humans continued arriving. And slowly, carefully, with patience and genuine care, they began rebuilding what the galaxy had lost when the dragons died. Not through force or conquest, but through the simple, revolutionary act of staying. Sam's egg cracked open just as the sun set on the archive. A tiny dragon emerged, scales the color of Earth's sky. It chirped once, looked at Sam with ancient knowing eyes, and chose him. Theo smiled. The work was just beginning. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't facing it alone. None of them were. They had each other, their dragons, and a shared understanding that the universe needed beings who would stay when staying was hard. The last dragon egg had cracked, and the human orphan who refused to leave had shown the galaxy what it meant to be chosen, and to choose in return. The dragon's legacy lived on, carried by those who understood that sometimes the greatest act of heroism was simply being there when everyone else had walked away.